Good morning, everyone. Look at this awesome crew we have joining us. Yay. We're going to get going here in just a little bit. We're sharing it out, getting everybody on. Look at David there, rocking it in the white room. How are you doing, David?
How's it going? How's it going, everybody? I'm
It's
so excited
fantastic.
today.
How do I
I'm,
turn
ex
my camera on?
I'm excited to have you here.
Camera,
Are you wearing the
camera.
lightning bolt shirt?
I'm not. I'm wearing the
Oh,
Energizer
look at that.
Publishing.
I saw the top of the lightning bolt, the publishing shirt. I love it.
Yep, we got, we're doing a book launch, man. We got to talk about the publishing company and all the
Right.
amazing things that would
Oh,
happen.
Becca.
Right, exactly. I'm excited to have that. We have three fun different shirts then between Katie, you, and I. Love it. We got Rebecca here from Scotland. Yay! Welcome, Rebecca. Yay! Good. I can do math. Good afternoon. Right, good afternoon to you. Math is hard. Good early morning to you, Laura. Welcome
Good
to
morning.
California.
Good morning.
Yay! Denise, welcome. You're East Coast time, so that works. Hello. Did you play some music this morning, Denise?
Absolutely. That's why the background is all different in here because I'm actually in the studio and I said, oh, I need to jump on this.
Well, I'm glad you hopped in.
Yay.
Yay, love it, love it. We have Vernil here. Good morning,
Good morning,
Vernil.
good morning, good morning.
Oh,
It says no happy, it feels.
No,
That's just sad.
no, it says how happy it feels.
oh, yay.
I love it.
It's
That's
great, so you've
awesome.
seen this one before.
I know, I was just giving you shit. I love it.
Okay. I was like, wait
Oh,
a minute. I was like, you've seen this.
I have, and I love that shirt. It's such a cool hoodie.
Yeah.
Oh, not a day over fabulous. Love it.
Love it. Mhm.
That is awesome, Laura.
Thanks.
We have Alicia here. Welcome, Alicia. Yay. Oh my gosh. Yeah, feel free to unmute and chat if y'all like. As we get started here, we're sharing it out. We have Beverly hopping in here as well. Yay. Look at that. We have two awesome people from the UK, people from all over the US being rock stars joining us. And they have Katie and I from Wisconsin just being cheeseheads, you know.
Hi, Katie.
Hi.
Oh my gosh.
Or afternoon, or whatever.
It's one of those things. Like Katie's actually gonna have to talk today. It's crazy. Like she can't just hide on behind the camera. Right?
Katie, I love your earrings.
Thank you.
Fabulous.
Thank you.
Yay.
We have Beverly bringing us the UK sunshine. Yay! Thank you for going on for a walk.
Hi, everybody.
How are you doing, Beverly?
Uh-oh.
I'm doing great. Thank you.
Oh,
It sounds beautiful, but you're breaking in and
Very
out.
good.
It looks
bless
beautiful.
her heart.
That was nearly a jam beat there.
There she is.
That's
Hi,
That's-
Beverly.
That's Beverly. She's always jamming out, giving us those tunes like that.
Yeah.
She's out for a
Okay,
walk. Oh, now we hear you.
I'll
Yeah.
turn the camera off. Maybe that'll help.
There you
Hi,
go.
Hi, Beverly.
Oh my gosh. I love it. Yay, such an awesome family. And we have Morris here as well. Yay. Welcome, Morris. How are you doing?
Mhm.
You're muted, but it's good
You're
to
on
see
mute.
you.
You're on mute.
Excellent.
You're excellent. We'll take excellent. I like excellent. That's awesome. Yay. Katie, why don't you just chat for a little bit? I'm going to make sure that Facebook's being cooperative here because it doesn't look like it's wanting to cooperate. So I'll be.
See.
Oh, there you go. You or David, just take it away. Just talk for a bit while I'm busy here on my phone.
Just
Yeah.
about here, just
Well,
it's like I don't
So I'm so glad that everybody's going to be part of it. This is like actually it's the first publishing event, right? We've had a couple of lives, but this is the first really exciting. The first two books published by Energizer Publishing House. So that's a big celebration, and it's led by our leaders. I mean, we're all leaders, but it really is taking us to this next level of this actual real books. So a lot of people talk about it, and that's one of those things that I'll talk about at the back end. But a lot of people talk about it. Most books that are written are actually unwritten. So we have all these things that we wrote, and I I'm an example of it. I have 5 books that will be out by the end of the year because I've written them during the year and I haven't finished it. So now I know how to not only start a book, I know how to write it, get it edited, and I know how to publish it. And that's what we're going to be doing here. But you also want to make sure it gets done right. And I don't want to take away too much time from everybody, but think about that. How many of you know that in your heart you haven't had a story yet? Just raise your hand. I know I have more stories, and that's what my distraction is. Right? So you have a story. So that's the easy part. That's the beginning part. Now, what are you going to do with that story? And what is that story going to teach and bring out to the universe? That's where the power is. That's where our energy really comes into it, is taking that story, learning how that story, and growing with that story.
Yeah. Good. That's good.
Okay, yeah. So I saw a few hands out. Does anyone want to share, even just what their story is? What's something that you would like to share? I don't want to pick on anybody, but I will. I
Were
am
you
from
a
New York,
teacher,
so
David? Were you a teacher in your past life?
I wasn't. I always wanted to be. I'm like a recovering teacher. My mom and my sister were teachers. Well,
Mhm.
my sister's still teaching, but yeah, I actually, but I do, Bernil. So I do enjoy the opportunity to teach people how to heal
Yeah,
themselves and now write books
Good.
and heal yourself through writing books.
yeah.
Mm.
It's like one book that I've always like thought about writing is that I use a service called Access Ride here in New York in the States. It's a paratransit service, and sometimes most of the time they're pretty terrible. So, and I have some like amazing stories that I've like shared on Facebook over the years, and I'm always thinking like I should just compile them all and put them into a book. But I really just it's just always been an idea. It's nothing that I've really like conceptualized yet in my head.
I
Mm.
think that's a great idea,
And that's
and
something that I'm still thinking about it.
yeah, I think it's a great idea, and so I'll share with everybody that some of the books that I wrote were for healing for me. You get frustrated. Who here has ever been frustrated? Yeah. Okay, I'm just looking. Yep. Okay. Yeah. We've all been frustrated. So how do you do that? As Spencer and Katie preach out, we have to move that energy. How do we move that energy?
Mhm.
I've found pretty successfully to move my energy by writing. I like writing, and it's not a story about that if I'm frustrated because something has happened to me, I have to write about that. I just figure out and I meditate. I do move my energy differently because a lot of times we don't move our energy is because we're damned. Sort of like the beavers in the river. Is it just all that stuff piles on, and then the logs block the river. And what we want to do is keep our flow going. And that's where writing is a huge aspect and a huge tool for us. There used to be a book, well, there still probably is the book, called Writing Down the Bones, and it's just writing it down, not for anybody to read. You can burn it. I've done that process as well, much like anybody who's been to one of the Energizer retreats. At the end, we write down some things and we burn it. It's a very healing. I once wrote 35 pages, just pop, 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 pop. I was so intent in writing that then I was able to, and I remember sitting out there, it was a Mother's Day, probably about 4 years ago, and I watched it burn. I had my protected, wasn't starting a forest fire. We had in my pit and my fire pit, and I had the cover on so nothing would go up. But there was such a release of energy for me to get through what I needed to get through at that time. Yeah, I guess it was 2020 because it was right before it was the formation of my TEDx talk. So it was what everything I wrote, and you write a lot more than you're ever going to speak when you speak on stages. And doing that got me through exactly what I needed to get through to feel some of that release that I needed to release. So I would suggest that to everybody. Bernil, definitely put together some of those stories. I once at one point said I was going to write a book, and I haven't yet, about all the weird dating stories I've had in my life. Um, and that's what we need to do. So the opportunity, yeah, release ceremonies are a bomb. Um, Oh, okay. Thanks for picking up the book. I didn't remember who did it. I read that book uh, probably when I was in my 20s. And yeah, I was in my 20s because it was when my a girlfriend that was in one of my other books um, is had died, and they said you just got to write some of your grief out. So
Mhm.
writing, that doesn't mean it goes away. I'm not here to say
No.
if you write it, it all feels better, but you
Yeah.
can move the energy differently. I'm a big energy guy. That's why Spencer and I really align well. I do believe that once we change our energies and how we move those energies, that's the power that we all have. And writing a book or writing your own journals, right? Most people, when you Google it or AI it, what do I need to do to feel better? Most of
Mhm.
them say journal. So journaling and writing eventually turn into something else. And what it turns into is the opportunities for books like Katie and Spencer's book this year. I'll turn it back over to Spencer.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for carrying it, David. I appreciate that and sharing. Writing can be so cathartic, right? It's a way to release, and for
Mhm.
many people, right? I know not everyone feels that way about writing, but it's so beautiful to get the thoughts out on the page, and whether that's journaling or you're writing a full book. And there's some people who struggle writing.
Mhm.
You're right. I know. I was thinking about you, Rebecca. Right? Like I know struggling. It's hard for you being dyslexic. It's difficult to write. And there's ways still of writing and journaling, getting out. Right? It could be voice memos and different things. Just getting those stories out. You have ghostwriters, right? David's a ghostwriter too, and all that,
Mhm.
just to help people write down your stories. I was reading Richard Branson's autobiography, and so he's dyslexic to a
Yeah.
degree,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And so he struggles with it, but he found ways to make it work for him. But he had a ghostwriter for the book, right, to compile it,
Uh-huh.
those things. So it's finding those ways that work for you. And there's so many different types of books out there to share, the stories to share. Like there's the nonfiction books, right? You're sharing the expertise you have. Like most
Mhm.
of my other books have been, right? Four uh, my first four books were or were nonfiction books, right? Sharing expertise, sharing things I've learned along the journey. The fifth one was the quote book, the Prince 101 Uplifting Quotes by the Prince of Positivity. And now this one is my first one in a totally different realm, right? So it's my first fiction book. So that's another aspect, the fiction side. You're sharing a story, you come up with these characters and see where they lead you. And sometimes you have it fully formed, other times they guide you on the journey. And that's something that Katie's an expert in because she's been writing since she was a kid. So Katie, why don't you share a little bit about you and your writing journey?
Ooh, all right. Well, when I was in first grade, I had a teacher named Mrs. Clark, and she ignited in me this huge passion for reading and writing. She made me love telling stories and hearing stories and sharing stories. And I just started writing. I couldn't stop writing. Like I still have notebooks from when I was a little girl where I just wrote all these stories. And I remember when I've been working on stories, like I'll tell Spencer, like, oh, he'll say, what's happening next? And I'm like, well, I don't know, because the character hasn't told me what's coming up yet. And he'd look at me like, oh, all right, that must be a writer thing, you know? And then when he started writing his first fiction, he's like, you're right. The characters do show you where to go next.
Yeah, I thought Katie was a little crazy when she said, I'm like, okay, like for me, the other books are things I'm like, I have like a template, I know to follow. And she's like, I don't know, they haven't told me what's happening. I'm like, how does this work? Like, I don't understand. I totally get it now. Totally.
Way, sure. And kind of going back to what David was saying earlier, I know that when I was growing up, there were lots of struggles within my family, and writing was a huge therapeutic thing for me. I think without writing, I don't know if I'd be here. Not only journaling, writing down the things that were going on, the things that were bothering me, the feelings that I was feeling, but also writing stories. Just creating stories. Sometimes it was about a girl who's in the same situation as me, and how would that girl react to these things? What would she do if this was happening with her brother, et cetera, et cetera. And then sometimes just writing stories that are totally opposite of what my life was to try to be like, just take a breath out of that reality for a little bit. But I think writing in any form can be extremely helpful and very therapeutic for sure. I love writing. It's my thing. My students would come in, and I would always have kids every year when I was teaching who hated writing. And my goal was always to make them find a way to use it to their advantage, whether that was helping them process something at home or just getting excited about telling their own story. So I'm definitely all about writing.
It's been so cool to see Katie write over the years, and then since she retired from teaching, now have more time to dedicate to it and create a schedule that works for her to write often and hence get this book published. She just finished her first chapter book for kids, and so now she's editing and getting that ready for release later this year. And so now she's like, she's just going, right? One book after another, 3 to 4 books a year, I think is the goal. It's so exciting to see her shine and do the stuff she loves. And it's also equally as exciting to see you, all of you, do the things you love to do, to chase your passions, right? To live your life to the max. Know we are here for you to support you and help you on that journey. If it's writing a book, because I believe we all have stories we could share with the world. If you want to write a book, we have ways to help you, right? David is our director, our publishing director. He can help guide you and support you in that if you choose, right? And or to see if it's right for you now or later or whatever. Know that we have you and we're here to support you. So let's
Can I just add on to just one thing? So
go for it. Yeah,
I'll
of
share a
course.
story. I have a client who said I've never wanted I've always wanted to write a book, but I never could. She's 88 and her family experienced the Holocaust and things like that. And some of it was too traumatic. So because I heard that there were some people here who said, I have a story, but I can't write it or don't. So sometimes it's easy just to talk it out and then have somebody listen to it, in a way and find out what the blockages are. And where I'm going with this is then when I had uh, the client, she started crying during an episode. One, I can handle the mental wellness pieces of that, but that wasn't the reason why she was crying. She felt that she couldn't have told this story, and we did turn it into a fiction story. So it wasn't Dave did this, Dave did that type of story. We were able to turn it into something so much more powerful that brought her back into it. Because when we do write our stories, it is the visual. It's like Katie just said. I don't know, the character hasn't, told me yet. And it is true when we dive into those things, even if it's your own life story, you might know, obviously you know your life story, but when you create something else in a teaching way or something else, it becomes that much more powerful. It's wow, that's my story. And when you see it in black and white on a page, it becomes something differently. And I'll explain that a little bit later as well.
I love it. And it's so true. Wow, just sharing that can help you heal, help you learn and process and become aware, but then also help other people along the way, right? And whether it's through real life events told in a fiction way or in the raw nonfiction way, that works too. And I'm really excited for our Energy Boost event. This is the first one, and it's our first annual Energy Boost event. And the goal of these, it's kind of like the hope and goal, the vision for this event is that it's like, I don't know, like a mini virtual summit where we get to come together once a year and share some energy, give you a boost of energy, share some expertise, some things that can help you in your life as a big community. We get to come together and just be poured into. And then also share some cool stuff happening at Jones and Ford and some of the business stuff like we're launching this or doing this, right? To just give you a little insight and share something cool that we have coming up. That's kind of the vision for it. And so as I was talking with Katie and David, I'm like, all right, we have our books and when do we want to release it? And we're like, well, why not do it at the Energy Boost event, right? It makes sense. Like we get to share our books with you and launch. Actually, it is a full-on launch. I don't know. I don't need any quotations for it. It's a launch. We're launching it, right? We're launching these books, having fun, sharing it. So, okay, well, what topic are we going to talk about? How are we going to give you an energy boost? And we're like, well, we're talking about stories. We're sharing our stories. How about we talk about stories, right? The stories we tell ourselves, the stories we tell the world, and the stories we write down in books, right? The different books that we have and the stories we read. So we broke this. We have 3 speakers. You have me, sorry. Then you have the amazing Katie, and then you have the incredible David coming up. And we thought, well, let's break down these stories into 3 sections because these are the sections that, well, go into a story. You have the beginning, you have the middle, and you have the end. And where is that all going? And so that's how we're breaking up the speakers for today. And then after that, we'll have a little Q&A, and then we'll talk about our books and all that, a little Q&A session, and then we'll drop the links and all that good stuff so you can get your copies and share it out with your friends, and they can get their copies of it and all that good stuff. And then we'll head out for the day. So, and if you have questions, thoughts, anything, you can drop it in the comments. You could I would raise your digital hand here or raise your physical hand if you like. We'll be happy to call on you and chat, right? This is a fun conversation, interactive. This is the best part about it being the first year, right? I can do math here. I can't do math that fast. So 11 people here. So I could still call on you individually. Once we get to like 100 people, it's gonna be a little harder to call on y'all individually. So this is the time you actually get to share your voice and have all this stuff. So who knows what it'll be like next year. All right. So own your awesomeness, Spencer. Thank you, Alexandra. I will. I'll own my awesomeness. You own yours. I'm so happy y'all here. Yay. Welcome, Alexandra. I didn't say hi to you yet. So hello, welcome. Yay. All right, let's talk about the beginning of your story. When does your story begin? Anytime you want it to begin, right? Really, it's any time. It can be from the moment you were born, from the moment you were conceived, it could be well before that. For me, my story began when I decided to take control of it. I mean, my story was happening beforehand, but I finally decided to take that pen in my own hand, as it were, when I decided to be the master of my story, be the author of the story I was telling the world. You see, for years, for 20-something years of my life was happening to me, right? I was going to school. I was homeschooled for most of it, but okay, I was going to school and I had this assignment to do. Oh crap, this happened. Oh crap, this has happened. This is happening to me and now I have to do this, and oh, this happened. Now this is frustrating. Or why is the world feeling like it was against me? I was trying to do this stuff and it was all this stuff is happening against me. It was a struggle. Anything that happened in my life was happening to me, right? It wasn't for me. It wasn't benefiting me. It was like, I remember there was moments in my life, and maybe you felt the same way, where I felt like I was going through life and I'm like, well, life sucks and then I'm going to die, right? I'm just getting through this crap of life and then we'll see what happens on the other side. It sucks. It was a heavy weight to carry. And yes, there are positives. Yes, there are good things in life, but I was so focused on the negatives that I didn't see those positives. I was just like, well, let's get through this shit show today and see what happens. Let's just get through this thing and hopefully make it to the end of the day, right? And just be like, all right, put the head down, or maybe not even wanting to go to sleep because tomorrow it's going to be the same crap over again. At that point in my life was happening to me. And I remember it was in my late 20s when I first decided to try personal growth. I've been an entrepreneur my whole life for a variety of things. Most of you have heard those different stories, selling pumpkins as a kid and owning the snow shoveling and lawn mowing business and teaching piano lessons, things like that. Well, I still wasn't in personal growth. I was teaching fitness or coaching fitness at the time, and the company I was with was pushing personal growth. I was teaching full time and life was happening to me, right? It's like, well, this is happening. I set my goals. I was trying to make stuff happen, but it was still, the world was against me. At least that's how I looked at it. I had to prove myself. So I was doing this, and the company said, well, just do some personal growth, right? Read these books and help you out. And I'm like, I'm so sick of professional growth at this time. Like I go to in-service and there, to me, felt like a total waste of time because I couldn't get anything out of it. And life was happening to me. Like, why am I here? What they're sharing doesn't actually apply to me. But I also wasn't intentionally trying to apply it, right? I was just like, spoon feed me and then I'm out otherwise, right? And they were nice about it. They're like, okay, cool. Whenever you're ready, it's here. Okay. After hearing about it for like a year plus, I'm like, fine, I'll give it a shot. And for me, I like to give things at least a fair shake. If I'm going to commit, I'm going to commit and just go for it. Katie knows this way too well about me. Like I'm just like, and we're gone. Like, what was the other idea? I had an idea after our cruise last week. We were flying back, and I was telling Katie, "Oh my gosh, I have this idea," and she's like, "Oh no, this is not good." And then like literally by the next day, it was done. Like I'm like, all right, I ordered the stuff, I got the printed out, figured it out, and then it was just assembling it this week. So y'all get to see what that's coming out soon. But she's like, and it's done already. I'm like, right, because I had this idea. All right. So personal growth is the same way. Like, all right, well, I was too cheap to buy a book. I hated reading at the time. I liked listening. And I was too cheap to buy a book, so I didn't even want to do Audible to listen to it. So I went to the library and realized, oh, you could download audiobooks from the library. That's cool. So, all right, let's find one that sounds interesting. So I did Eat That Frog by Brian Tracy. I heard he was this big guru in personal development at the time. I'm like, okay, all right, and downloaded it for free, right? So I had like a week or 2 weeks to listen to it. And I had a 30-minute one-way commute to work. And I listened to it on the way there. And I'm like, okay, interesting ideas. All right, let's give it a try, right? Let's actually implement what we said. I'd start implementing it that day, just from the first 30 minutes of listening. And I'm like, oh, this feels different. And then listen on the way back home, next day, repeat, start implementing it. I was hooked. Like, because I saw changes that day. That first day, I'm like, oh, I'm noticing things. Second day, third day, everything started to click. And I'm like, this is freaking. So this is personal development. Like, oh, I'm all in on doing this. And from that moment on, I've been hooked on personal growth, not just listening to it, but actually implementing the things that I've learned. And now I was doing that for a number of years, listening to books. Still didn't like actually reading, physically reading a book. Even though the funny part is I published how many different magazine articles and like 2 books at that time. Hated reading. Crazy. And then an acquaintance of mine, I was having coffee with him and we were talking about personal growth. And he sent me in the mail, didn't tell me, just sent me a book in the mail. And it was Chop Wood, Carry Water. I'm like, okay, cool. He's like, here, just give it a try, read it, whatever. Oh my God, such an amazing book. Highly recommend it. Chop Wood, Carry Water. And it was a quick, easy win for me because the chapters were short. They had good content to it. So I felt like I had these quick wins. And I breezed through the book in like a week, which is unheard of for me because I'm a slower reader or have been a slower reader in the past. It's a story I'm trying to rewrite in my life now. Any case. And then literally a week later, he didn't know I finished the book. I didn't tell him I finished the book. He sent me another book called The Energy Bus by John Gordon. And another amazing book. Highly, highly recommend it. And that book, again, short chapters, quick wins, actionable steps at the end of it. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. From that moment on, I've been hooked on reading, actually reading physical books. So now, not only do I listen to podcasts and audiobooks, I read them. But over this whole journey, listening to them, reading, and writing, I've realized that I'm the author of my story. Life isn't happening to me, it's happening for me. And at the beginning of our story, it feels scary at times. It feels like it's messy, it's weird, we're not sure what it's going to be like. And I invite you to take that moment and reframe it. Reframe it from being that scary uncertainty to being a sacred time in your life. To being a moment when it's not about being perfect or having perfection. It's about giving yourself permission to be at the beginning of your story. And as I said at the beginning of your story can be any time you want it to be. Right? Your story could have started when you were born. Your story could start today. It could start tomorrow. But I hope it starts today, at least, so that you can be the author of your story. Don't let other people write your story. Other people wrote my story for 20 plus years saying, oh, he has to prove himself. Oh, he's this crazy, weird guy who wears wild suits, or he's always loud and in your face. Yeah, I'm those things too, right? But they were writing that story. Now I get to take that narrative and make it mine. Writing and reading are very different skills. Totally, Alexandra, right? They really are, right? They're different skills. And that's a beautiful thing, right? And reading's one skill, writing's a different skill. That's yeah, I see what you're saying. I appreciate that. And I'm not a good writer, which is crazy. I've gotten a lot better. Katie will attest to this. I was a horrible writer at first. The grammar, English generally, not good. Katie, thank God, was a proofreader, and she was like, "Holy crap! Like I have to look through this." Anytime I had like an article go in for a blog post, she wasn't actually saying that, but I'm sure mentally she's going, "Okay, let's see how many commas I have to get rid of and all that." Thankfully, I've gotten better over the years. Bernil, I know you're shocked, but I have gotten better with commas. That's how bad they were.
Yes, you have.
For those that don't know, Bernil was one of the editors for The Best View in the World. So she got to read it. Her and Katie read it beforehand amongst with a couple others.
I can't wait to read it again.
Yay!
Now that I have my copy.
For me, both skills are difficult for different reasons. I get it, Rebecca, right? Writing, reading, they're different and they're hard for different reasons. And that's okay. It's good to know it and you can work on it or find ways to work around it. For me, my workaround was, because I didn't want to read, my workaround is I'll listen to it. I still get to absorb the information. It's a little different, but I still get to absorb that information. And on this journey, I give myself permission to be like, oh, that's a struggle for me. I give myself permission to start here. I'm going to start with these audiobooks. I'm going to start taking control of my story. And really dive into that mindset of you are in control of your life. Now, some people, and maybe you're one of them, if you believe in God, awesome, universe, source, I don't care what you call it. For me, it's all the same thing, right? It's this big energy being out there in the world. And we're energy beings ourselves, right? So we're made in that energy image and we're ourselves. So why not let our light shine? Why not be in control of that story? God or universe source is giving us the opportunity to write our own story. Sure, things might happen. God might present these different things to you if you believe that, these different opportunities, but it's your choice of how you do it. Are they happening to you or are they happening for you? And whether you realize it or not, you are already telling a story. You're already telling a story to the world every single day. To the world. You're telling a story every single day to yourself about who you are, what you're capable of, what's possible for you, where do you dream to go? Because I don't know about you, I have that voice in my head, that little Spencer voice, who's a real jerk at times. Like he is really good at belittling me, making me feel small, worthless, weak, dumb, insignificant, like I have to prove myself. And now for the last 5+ years, actually since really taking control, so like 7-8 years, I've learned to get that voice to be quieter and to be like, he's still there. Don't get me wrong, he's still there. Some days are louder than others, but I've quieted him down and realized, oh, he's pushing that side of the story. That isn't the story I want to share. Because I'm still telling myself that story, the thoughts we think, oh, I'm not capable of doing that. I'm not capable of writing a book. I'm not capable of, or I'm not able to ride a bike. I'm not able to do X, Y, Z. But you are in control of your story. I'm going to share a story about Beverly really quick here. I didn't even ask her, so hopefully she'll be okay with it. This last year, Beverly learned to ride a bike for the first time. Like, how awesome is that? She learned to ride a bike for the first time, and now she's riding it like a rock star. Before, her story was, I couldn't ride a bike. Well, guess what? She took command of her story in her mind, and then in her heart, and then out with the world. And then now she's riding a bike. But she had to own it. And it was scary, but she said, no, this is sacred. I give myself permission to be bad at it at first and then grow from there. That's what happens in our lives. That's what happens in our story. It can be scary, but make it sacred. Give yourself that permission to go forward. Knowing that there's going to be highs, there's going to be lows, there's going to be bumps in the middle, and that's okay. Katie will talk about the middle section a little bit, how we can get through those bumps that happen. But you can do it. You are in control of your story. No one else is. I'm not in control of it. Katie's not. David's not. And anybody else here is not in control of your story except you. Not your parents, not your friends. You are. So I invite you to take a moment and think if you were going to write a book about your life, because we're talking about the stories that we share, if you were going to write a book about your life, what would your chapter 1 be titled? What tone would it set? Think about it. Anytime you read a book or you listen to a book, that first sentence sets the tone for the rest of the story. That title sets a tone for the whole story. What's your chapter 1 called? And you could change and adjust it anytime you need. But let me ask it this way. What tone do you want to set? What story do you want to share? No, you don't have to have it all figured out. You just have to start. When I wrote The Best View in the World, I didn't have it all figured. I had it roughly mapped out of the different things, but I didn't have it all figured out. I just need to start writing it. And then the characters guided that journey. And sometimes they went along the path I kind of made for them. Other times they're like, screw you, Spencer, we're going to go over here and have this crap happen to us because that sounds fun. I'm like, oh, okay. But I had to give myself permission to start. So the beginnings are sacred. They're beautiful. And give yourself permission to start. But they're not always easy. Because who knows what's coming up? They lead us into the heart of that story, to the meat of it, where there's the real messy stuff, the highs, the lows, where transformations begin. So to guide us through the middle of this, the challenges, the doubt, the grit, the grind of it all, I thought it's only fitting to pass it off to someone who's walked it herself. She's been on this journey. So please help me welcome my amazing and incredible partner in crime, life. That's right, partner in life and crime and creativity, Katie.
All right, so I get to talk to you about the middle. And the middle of a story is really where the magic and the mess collide. Because I think there's magic in anyone's story, whether it's a character in a book or whether it's us living our life. And there's bound to be at least a little mess as we or characters walk through different stages in life. It's not the shiny beginning, it's not the victorious end, but it's that messy, uncertain, what is even happening right now, middle. So you know the place. It's the part where you question everything, where the plan falls apart, where you're not sure if you're the hero or the villain, or maybe just the narrator. And the last 2 years, I can say, have really felt like being in the middle for me a little bit. I've been transitioning out of the classroom teaching role and moving into, self-employment and changing really what my life looks like. I've had to really focus on figuring out exactly what my new life should look like. And it's taken me the last 2 years to really get a routine and a system that I feel really comfortable with. I went from that very regimented, the kids had to be at music at this time, so we needed to do this, and there was this many minutes of reading and writing and math. And then having this total freedom was really crazy to me. And then there's that whole emotional piece of, oh, I'm not a teacher anymore. I'm not going to have these kids seeing me as their whole world. It was a big transition. And so I really felt it was really messy. I was really in the middle of that part of my story. And so I've taken on new roles and really new self-identity. And I think that everybody at some point in their life has that middle part. And, for my story, this messy middle is the messy middle of my career, I guess. It's not the messy middle of my entire life, right? Because we have different parts of our story. And for me, my story of my journey in teaching and my journey in working, this part is the middle of my story. And every meaningful story has a middle filled with tension, with unknowns, and with turning points. And so does every meaningful life. So why does the middle matter so much? The beginning of a story can give us context. It sets us in the place. It tells us who we're talking about. It gets us ready to find out more. And the end can give us resolution. But the middle part is where the money's at, because it's really where we learn. It's where we fight. It's where the growth actually starts happening. In the middle, things get real. Supposed friends may be revealed as traitors. We're pushed to do things we don't want to do or things we don't think are right. There's pressure, there's resistance, we run into detours, we doubt ourselves. But here's what I've learned about the middle. The middle is where your story actually gets really interesting. It's where you discover your strength. It's where transformation begins. Without conflict, there's really no depth. If you think about a book, if you read a book where there was zero conflict, that would be kind of a boring book, right? Even when I was teaching writing, I had to teach the kids, like there needs to be some sort of a problem, some sort of an obstacle for your character. Otherwise, the story is just kind of boring. And so in storytelling, conflict is really essential. It reveals character. When a roadblock appears in front of a character in a story, we see how they respond to it. What questions do they ask? What actions do they take? Do they stay true to themselves, or do they bend and shift to meet the expectations of other people? And in life, as in stories, conflict doesn't break us, it shapes us. I know I wouldn't be the person I am today without the conflict that I've faced throughout my life. If I hadn't grown up with a brother who was already getting arrested by the time he was in 5th grade and became a father when he had just turned 16, all of those things that caused turmoil in my family and really affected me emotionally and mentally throughout my formational years. If I hadn't experienced those things, I wouldn't be who I am right now. That conflict, that struggle, that pain, it hurt, right? I mean, no doubt, there were lots of things through my life that were tough, but now I've come out on the other side, and those things shaped me and taught me how to be resilient, how to be strong, how to be true to myself. So conflict shapes who we are. And the questions that we ask, the choices that we make, the discomfort that we feel, all of that builds the arc of who we are becoming throughout the different stages of our life. So let's reframe the conflict. Instead of seeing it as a stop sign, see it as a signal or a catalyst for something. Because without the storm, we wouldn't be able to grow roots strong enough to withstand the next, right? There are some life conflicts that we find in stories. And there are some kind of common ones, like man versus self, where a character's feeling doubts, imposter syndrome, they have an inner critic whispering in their ear. And the same is true of life, right? There have been times we've all doubted ourselves. We thought, well, I don't have the skills to do that. I know when I started my doctoral program a few years ago, I had major imposter syndrome. I was like, who the heck am I? I'm in this group with all these amazing people who are administrators and researchers, and they're changing the world. And I'm just this little classroom teacher. Imposter syndrome, huge, right? And the inner critic. I mean, who has not experienced their inner critic whispering in their ear and telling them they can't do it, they're not good enough, they're not smart enough? And this conflict of man versus self is in stories and in real life, right? There's also man versus world, where you're fighting against the systems or expectations, you're facing burnout. And I know I definitely experienced this when I was teaching, facing those systems and the things that were in place that in my heart I knew weren't best for kids. That was a huge struggle for me. And that really led me toward burnout. By the time I left the classroom, I was approaching that point for sure. There's also man versus change with grief, transition, reinvention. We all experience these at different points throughout our lives, and many times throughout our lives. We lose people we love, friendships end, we transition from this job to that job, we move from this house to that house, a new town. We reinvent ourselves to be able to fulfill different roles and different expectations. And as you encounter these conflicts, your discomfort may be trying to direct you to something new. Your resistance is revealing where you're out of alignment. And if you think about some of the best characters in stories, they're shaped by struggle, not by certainty. If you've read The Catcher in the Rye, a really famous story by J.D. Salinger, Holden Caulfield is the main character, and he's all about struggle and uncertainty. That's the whole point of the story. He's not sure about anything. He's processing through and he's trying to discover what he needs to do and who he needs to be. Without that struggle, that story wouldn't matter and literary people would not talk about it today. Same is true of Fahrenheit 451. The discomfort and the struggle and the feeling of being out of alignment for Guy in that story is what drives the story. It's what makes it something worth reading. So, just as characters can be in that struggle, if you find yourself in life in a season of stuckness or struggle, I want you to think about what could this moment be trying to teach you? What's the conflict showing you you're capable of? Because in every conflict, we can discover strengths we didn't even know we had. And sometimes we need conflict to see how powerful we really are. I know I discovered that in my life. When there were struggles and problems, that's when I finally opened my eyes and went, holy moly, Rocky, you are like super buff. So that conflict can help us see our true strengths. So just as each and every moment of conflict in a story shows the reader who that character is and who they are becoming, the same is true for us in life. Conflict shapes us and transforms us. So really, as you're in the messy middle, it's important to own the story that you're in. So even though it's messy, the middle is the part of your story that you will probably look back on and say, that's where it all changed. That's where the interesting stuff happened. There were bad times, sad times, happy times, fun times, hard times, but all of the times mattered. In writing, the middle is where we add tension, deepen relationships, we test the hero. If you think of a movie, a TV show, or a book, where does the really exciting stuff happen? Even in a story with like a high octane beginning or a slam bang ending, I would argue that the really meaningful and character shaping stuff takes place in the middle of the story. This middle, it matters. It's not an intermission, it's not a break between the beginning and the end, it's a transformation. So whether you're writing a story or just living your life, you don't need to have it all figured out right now. You just need to stay in the story because the chapter you're on now is shaping the next. Just as in a book, each chapter builds the foundation for the next one. The chapter we're in now that we're living contributes to the next part. And maybe your middle, your story that you could share is the exact thing that someone else will need to hear about to help them when they're in a time of struggle. And you can't inspire them with a story you've quit on. So whether in writing or in life, you may not know the ending yet, but you just need to keep turning the page. So I want to invite you to do a little reflection, and you can either start thinking about this now or you jot it down and do it later. I'm going to drop these questions into the chat so that you can focus on them later if you'd like to. I want you to think of a time in your life that didn't go quite as planned. And I'm sure we all have moments we can think of for that. But I want you to think about that and think about what you learned from it and how it shaped you. What did you discover about yourself? What did that show you about who you really are? And I also want you to think about if your life was a story, what chapter are you in? And what is that chapter teaching you about your own strength? So to wrap it up here, I just want to say the middle can be hard. It's where challenges arise, where people transition. It's where the hero nearly gives up, and then we hope chooses to keep going. So if that's you right now, feeling stuck, stretched, burned out, know that you're not lost and you're not alone. You're becoming. And one day, this chapter, your chapter, will be someone else's hope. So that is the messy middle. And next up, we've got Dave, who's going to tell us about, he's going to move to the end of the story. So Dave, take it away.
Okay, and so when you're writing, thank you, Katie and Spencer, for all the opportunities regarding this journey with Energizer Publishing. And, so we think about the end, how the book ends. But how many times have we read a book to the end and said, man, I want more? When does that writer have a little bit more? Or we imagine. So if that book ends, how does that story go? What happens to the characters? What happens at the end? Now, let me tell you a little bit about the first book I wrote was this. It's what it says when your heart says it's your time to soar. It's a bunch of personal stories in there, and I give some little bits and pieces of what you can apply to this story or what some opportunities. And that's what an end is as well. It's your time to soar. So I wouldn't call it an ending. as you go higher and higher, that's why those people, let me put on the view differently, just because I want to just see, I want to see everybody, the gallery. There we go. Here's our little gallery. How many people have already published a book? If you could just raise your hands for a second. Okay, a few of us, a few of us, but that's okay. I just want to tell you, how many people have children? Okay, so those who haven't done either yet, and I say yet because we all are here because we have that hope. But the first day that I thought that I would love to have a book, I was in elementary school. And I remember it was the same day that I thought, man, when the turn of the century comes, I'll be 32, I'll be a real man and have my life all figured out. Neither happened. And we live our lives. We get into that middle part, that transition part that Katie just talked about. And sometimes I went through a divorce in the middle of my 30s, and I thought that that was the end of my life. And then other things had happened in my life, and those changes happen through that growth period, that transition. And I've learned when I became my most authentic self, when I knew what my story was, not the things that have happened to me, but what my true story was, that was the power. So as we start that beginning and learning and growing and the transition, we're going to get to that part where we want to soar. And that's why that name of that first book is When Your Heart Says It's Your Time to Soar. Does anybody on this call believe that it's not their time to get their story out or to take it to another level? They're just not sure how. You know, I've been there. And in fact, I'll share with you, when we started planning this, I came in on the late end of the planning pieces. I said, Spencer, don't worry, I'm going to have a book also. And today I am not launching a new book because what happened is in the middle part of that story, the transition. I have some books written I could have just put out there. It's real easy to do that. But what we do with Energizer Publishing, we want the book to come out at the right time when the author feels it's the right time. Because in the middle of me finishing up one of the books that I have ready, well, there was a story that came back to me. A story very similar to that's been walking with me for many years. It's called Sandy's Diary, which is one of the books that I'm almost finished doing. But that story I started on Easter Sunday, and you just start writing. How many people, when we talk about writing down the bones, I mentioned earlier, just sometimes sit and write. It doesn't make any sense. There might not be an appropriate comma. My grammar isn't well either. I need people like Bernil and Katie to review and beat me up a little bit on that doesn't make any sense, but it made sense in my head. And that's where we do come through it. And that's where we bring ourselves to that next level of soaring. Because when we walk through the opportunities, when you go higher and higher, you bring yourself higher and higher. You meet people like Spencer, Katie, who want you to rise, will help lift you up. We all go through that soaring period. And what do we do? On this call is my friend Morris, and he regularly supports me in so many different ways. In fact, some of the stories that I write, I'm in the middle of finishing 4 books, and that's the reason why I didn't do it. But that's why I'm also very confident in what I could do because I want to soar. I know there's different energies when we're soaring, right? Think about when we're in a plane. Sometimes it's great. You come up and you go down, no problem. It doesn't even feel like you've moved anywhere. And sometimes we'll hit some turbulence and move differently. And that is also okay. That's the same process in writing. It's how we want to soar, how we want to learn to take those soaring opportunities and grow. Again, when I promised Spencer, I was like, man, I could do this. And then a story came up to me. I could have said, nope, I'm just going to push it through and I'm just going to make my commitment. It wouldn't have felt that much. I want you to feel when you get your book, and I do say when, not an if, because that's going to happen. If it's really something that's important to you, as during that transition part of your life, then you're gonna make it happen. Those transitions get you to go to that next level. And sometimes we can't go to that next level because of the turbulence of as we're soaring. And when we change some of the turbulence, then we know how to we know how to fight through it. And we do know that the challenge is when a plane takes off, it's taking off against the wind, not with the wind. So the expectations of you having some challenges, yeah, that's what happens. That's actually a good thing because you just need to learn how to put the wing flaps up in a right way so you can soar a little bit higher. And why do you want to do that? That's a personal reason. Why do you want the book? I think there's great opportunities. I think Bernil, when she was sharing earlier about the challenges of, the Access-a-Ride, while it's a good program, there's a lot of challenges. They give you a wide window to pick you up and to drop you off, and you might be with people who are nice and some people who are experiencing life differently. They're in a different transition. So those are the pieces that we're able to then saw through and get through, and maybe we just make some funny stories. Maybe you're able to take that story of pain into something else. So when I wrote that first book, one of the first stories I wrote was about my first girlfriend. Has anybody ever had a first partner yet? Okay. I don't see a lot of hands, but okay. I hope you all get a first partner at some point. Um, you have that one person that you had, and for me, that one person, I thought that was going to be the love of my life, and she was killed in a car accident. And what do you do? I was in my early 20s. And I pushed a lot of that stuff down until I realized so many years later I had survivor guilt. And that was why it was among the stories I needed to tell you. But I'm not talking about that in my book. What I want you to do, I do mention it because I want you to think about the first love in each of your lives. If you're still with that person, awesome. Even if you're not, I'm not saying that you have to go back to that person, but you know what you felt. Now, again, when I wrote this book, when the book first got into my hands, I'm going to tell you, it was one of the worst years of my life. 2022 was one of the worst years of my life. My best friend had passed away unexpectedly. I then took care of his mom, and she eventually passed away. She had Alzheimer's, and I took care of her, as well as managing my own mom deteriorating in life, and she eventually transitioned in October. So we got February, August, forget about all the middle stuff, right? That middle messy stuff that Katie was talking about. And then my own mom, who, as I was finishing up my book, and she never got to see my book, passed away October, Halloween, right? One of the happiest days in America. We celebrate it. We do everything. I woke up to that call at 6 o'clock in the morning about my mom, and you know, I was comfortable with what had happened, but that transition. What I did was then I wrote an additional chapter to my book. It was in publishing, it was already being edited. And I said, I'm going to leave one more thing. The one thing I laughed that I added was a picture of my mom, me holding my mom's hand, and then, or her holding my hand, the last time we were together. And when we think about soaring, it's not only about the metaphorically, it's not about heaven or anything like that. I wanted to be reminded at the end of our lives go through a journey. As Spencer said, we start a story when we start a story. That's the beginning. The beginning is that first heartbeat that we hear is our mother's heartbeat, whatever that feels like for you or whatever happens related to that. But it's true, no matter what. Then we go through that messy part, that transition. And we learn how to grow through some of the transitions because we're in groups like this, the Energizers. We find the right supports. We find the people to get us to soar. And then we all do soar. Again, sometimes it's going to be messy. Sometimes even, earlier in the week, it's transitional. There's the headwinds of the wind is going to hold us back. But we're still going to accomplish. We're still going to be here showing up to what are we going to do? We're going to soar. We're going to see the great thing about soaring is every level you go, you see things that you hadn't seen before when you were on the ground, when you didn't have the strength to manage the headwinds. So now going back to writing, the writing part of it, the end is the end, but it doesn't have to be. Has anybody ever heard of like a series? So if you have a story, yeah, thank you, Laura. If you ever have a story, the story doesn't have to end. That doesn't mean doesn't mean the characters are still living. Again, I'll tell you, the first time I attempted fiction was the book Redemption. And it was, again, I started it from a dark place where I was personally writing. I was feeling frustrated. I was feeling a lot of things, but I didn't want to stay in that energy. I wrote the book and I'm pretty proud of it. But I didn't, it was about my healing. Then I'll tell you the funny story. I go write the book, publish it, get it out on Amazon, and go on vacation with my two girls, my two daughters. And didn't make a big push for Amazon #1 bestseller. I come back a week later, very little effort. It's before I left. I was like, look, published a new book. Hey, I'd love you to buy for it. It's $1.99, and I think it's still that same price. I've never changed the price on Amazon because the world read story. Come back, I get all these. Dave, it's #1 Amazon 1 bestseller. I go, okay, the story was for me. But the greatest part of that story that the reason why I'm telling you that is I got a call from a friend of mine who bought the book and made her daughter read it. It was over the summer break. And she's a 12-year-old little girl. And she goes, I have some questions. You're the author. And I'm like, uh-oh. The way that started wasn't really promising. She's asking me, okay, so now what's going to happen? They're at the horse ranch, and Paige got this. Now what's going to happen? I have now a series of questions that I now have on a book that I never thought I was going to take on to that next level. And you never know where you think the ending is. You are satisfied. I was satisfied when I ended Redemption, and I was like, yeah, I don't need to do anything more to that story. But then the people are going to pull you in and be like, hey, I read that book. Yeah, like Spencer says, I'm not Ernest Hemingway. I write and there's a passion in it. Anybody who knows me knows that's exactly who I am. But there's a passion if you read any of the books I have. And Redemption actually taught me that the end that I thought it was going to be is now not going to be the end. I haven't started writing that second book yet, but I keep getting questioned by that now 13-year-old girl who's like, "Come on, what's going on?" And I'm like, and I know that feeling. Anybody who might be a Stephen King fan, when he had the Dark Tower series, he had wrote a lot of those books early, and then the last book, it took him probably like 4 years. Or the same thing goes for what is it? Fire and Ice. The last trilogy of the Fire and Ice series by I can't think of George Martin, who does the oh, I can't Games of Thrones book. That the TV show started out. So he wrote the story. In fact, how they ended the series is not how he wanted the series end, but he didn't write enough to do that. He went on another different way. We can write that. We don't know how the story is going to end, and people are allowed to do that, to take our stories and start to create those questions and things like that. There are so many different powerful ways to tell your story. Because again, I'm going to show you one other thing. I put together a comic book um, because of how the different ways to tell your story. And you don't know where it's going to end. Again, after that book, I have a neighbor who's a 94-year-old woman who makes sure Sunday nights I have something to eat. Not because I need to have something to eat. She needs to have that passion. She needs to be taking care of somebody. Her family wants her to pull back a little bit, and she still needs to do that. So I give her my books because she won't let me buy her flowers or anything like that. And I wrote that book. I wrote the comic book and I gave it to her. And she goes, I figure out who everybody is in all your books. You're this, you're that, you're the other character. And I go, well, maybe. And she asked me the biggest question after writing The Pathfinder, the comic book. She goes, who are you in that book? And I hadn't really expected that answer. And when I sat down, I know I'm both characters. There's two main characters in the book because we go through a transition. The book loosely takes on the story of Sisyphus. And for those who don't know who Sisyphus is, it's the man who rolls the rock up the hill and pushes it back down. And then it goes back down in the valley, pushes it back up. That's his punishment. At the beginning, he thought it was a punishment. And then he learned that it was actually something that he liked to do. It was something that gave him purpose. So the ideas of an ending doesn't have to be something as harsh as a final ending. The ideas of an ending is also, it could be just the beginning of something brand new. And that's what I want to talk to you about was the soaring is when you start leveling up, you're able to see things that you hadn't been able to do. You're able to accomplish things that you might not have thought of previously. You're able to do what you want to do and take your story, crafting it. Much like that story I shared earlier about the Holocaust survivor. She thought she had to write an autobiography that we might have done in elementary school. You know, George Washington cut down a tree, all these things. But then we turned it into a fiction story based on her life, based on the story. And she started reading it, and that's what made her feel the story differently. That's when the characters became alive. The pain that she had experienced became a story that somebody else is going to want to hear. Because she kept on hearing those stories. Nobody wants to hear your story, Mom. No, Grandma. I hear your stories, but they didn't hear it. But there's a new way to live the story. And that's where sometimes the ending and learning the transition and then finding the right ending of the story doesn't mean it's the ending. It could also be just the beginning of your next book. So would love, if there's any questions, I would really love to talk to you or guide everybody through the beginning parts. I mean, that's the great thing that we've set up where many of the other publishing companies that you might have walked into already have, just give me a chapter, just give me a this. There's a difference between, and some of you I know well enough, and some of you I don't. So what I'd say is, if you know Spencer and Katie, they wouldn't put together with somebody who isn't as heart-centered as they are, and we'll make sure we're going to do it differently. Why I didn't publish my own book today is because I didn't want to just get a book out so I could say, oh, I got it out for the event. I'd rather sit with it and make sure that what we have done, like we're not going to take everybody's book just because you want a book. We want to make sure it's the right book, the right beginning, middle, and ending that you're going to be comfortable with. Because, well, we're not going to be one of those people. It's going to change your life. It will change your life. That day that I got that first book, the When Your Heart Turns Sore, because I had that dream as a elementary book as an elementary kid, right? I was probably like 8 or 9. And given the year that I had just experienced and holding the hard copy, and that was the reason why I asked who has children, because it's that moment that you hold that first book that you wrote is just, it's a different feeling. Don't get me wrong, but it's just as impactful as holding your child. I remember the days when I held my girls, but I also remember I can put you into that spot of when I was in the back of the restaurant. There was a book launch, and it was before a gathering. It was a BLN, it was a BLN conference that I was going to speak at, but it was the first time I got to hold my book, and I thought of that whole year, and I still get a little emotional now holding that book all by myself. There was a room full of people, but I made that time to hold it. I'll never forget opening that box like Christmas morning, but then looking at that book and seeing my name on the front of a book and knowing all the things that I took to get there, that I was bold enough to tell my story. I was bold enough to live through the transitions, which we're all still going to be transitioning through, but also to take myself to that soaring level. And that was my first book, 2022. Right now, I have 4 published books, as well as the comic book. So there's 5, and I probably will have, like I said, at the beginning of today, another 4 by the end of the year, just because they just need to be re-edited in my voice. That's the thing is I have these books that I wrote during the pandemic, in that pandemic where David was then. And I could publish them right now and would have been content. They're all true, they're all accurate, they're all exactly who David was then. But if I'm publishing it today, I want to make sure it's the David of today is publishing it. And then there's more learnings we have. So the longer we wait, the longer that we might modify our story. Our stories change, as Spencer talked about. Our stories are definitely going to change. What are we going to do with those changes? How are we going to work through those transitions to get us to that soaring and closer to the end of our first book? And turn it back over to questions. I'd be more than happy to fill up for everybody else.
I love it, love it, love it, David. Thank you so much for sharing. Give David a round of applause. That absolutely awesome. And the endings are so important. And so many times we feel like it's that ending, as David said, but it's not. Maybe it's the beginning of your next book. Maybe it's the beginning of that next chapter. And some of the things that I took away from what David said, a number of things that I took away. But one, because we didn't pre-plan this, we knew what sections we were going to talk about. And that was it. Like, we didn't know exactly what each other was going to say or anything. We, like living on the edge. And so a couple of takeaways I had from David is when his neighbor was, oh, which character are you in this story, right? Oh, I could pick apart these characters. How cool is that? And think about your life and what are people thinking? Oh, what character are they playing in their story, right? When they're just looking at you, not even a physically written book, but just your life. Oh, what character are they playing? You see it with other people, your spouse, your best friend, your kids. Oh, what character are they playing? You might see it one way. Their friends might see it a different way. They see it a different way. And that's okay. But for you, at least in your story, what character are you playing? Or maybe you're playing both characters, right? And what role do you want that to be like? And then there's a second part as you're ending. I'm like, oh, that's a great thing to share. Now it's gone, but that's okay. It'll come back when it needs to come back. Any thoughts, questions on any part of mastering your story? Because you have incredible stories to share, whether it's the life you're living. And oh, that's what I was going to say. People are inspired by you. They're inspired by the books you write, by the words you share, whether on social media, the words you share verbally, or even just by living your life, your story. People are inspired by it. They see it. I get messages, and now I know I'm more in the public eye and all that stuff, but I get messages from people who I had no idea were watching me and saying, thank you so much. You're inspiring me, right? I didn't know that, or you motivated me to do this, that, the other thing. I'm like, holy cow, I didn't know you were even noticed or were aware of any of it. You all have those people too. People see you, and you are inspiring them by you living your life, by being the author of their story. You're inspiring them to do the same thing, whether you recognize it or not. Morris, yeah, hands up. What do you got, man? Thank you for being here.
Oh, you're welcome. It's great to be here around this positive energy, still spreading from when you guys did the energy recharge here. We're still on that high and living all of that. I just wanted to share back from 2020 during COVID, I decided to do some memoirs on just taking my phone every so often because I had like a phobia and a panic that I'm going to get COVID. And that's the end of it because I lost a lot of people that I knew, people that I knew's parents, and in the pastoral care that I was doing, there was a lot of loss and it weighed heavy. And I said, oh, I want to leave something for the kids. Like, what I went through, I'm like, oh my God, I got to do all this stuff before I die. I'm dying like tomorrow. And David was on a couple of those. I'd called him in the middle of it, and he had given me some breathing techniques and things like that. And, during that panicked, but I'm still here. It's 5 years later. So from just David coming on board into my life, as opposed to it just being a memo to leave for the person, oh, for when I'm gone, or probably about when he first started coming around about a year and a half ago again, like regularly after he lost his corporate job, I started to say, no, I need to put something out there like now to leave, for people to see, but not necessarily my daughter, but other people that have gone through what I've gone through from growing up and things like that. So I sort of it's able to take something you might not even think of, you're just taking like notes and things like for memoirs, but being able to transition, just being able to put it out there. And then from that practice, just being able to put out more devotions, on, for healing, just taking that and saying, oh no, that person's not going to want to hear that, or who's going to listen to this if I'm writing it, or who's going to think this about me or feeling, and then just being in these communities and authenticity. It's like, it's for me and for my healing. It's not for that person to hear. It's like whatever I put out, I'm putting out, and I did my work on it. And then the surprising part to me was all the feedback that I get. This affected me. This did that. And then, at my church, they saw the devotions. They're like, I think you should go back into preaching and start preaching at the church. So I preached this past Easter, and then I posted the sermon. And then a friend of mine, that he calls me the Holy Roller, makes fun. He doesn't go to church. He goes, Mo, I don't know how this popped up on my phone. Like, you're scrolling videos, and then a video, he goes, you just came out and you hit this message to me about me being locked in a mental prison and how I could be free and, in God and things like that. Hit me. And he sent me a text. He never sent me a text like that before. So it's actually starting to write. And when you're expressing yourself, the relationships around me have just shifted because people see me like in a different, in a different light. And, I'm still on the journey of, putting chapters together, and I'm just, I'm lucky that Dave happens to be, the COO of our company, and I get to be around him regularly. We don't get to spend as much time in that warm and fuzzy because we're like hitting the pavement and getting everything together. But when we do have those times, like him showing his authenticity and has allowed me to open up and be that person, has just changed like the dynamics of relationships, just in church, at home, at work, with my people, with strangers, people I meet in, just at events. So I just want to put that out there for people, that it's for you, and whatever you put out, don't worry who's listening. Don't worry, this person might think of me differently because they'll never think of me. It's going to hit that person that you didn't think it was going to affect. And you can heal someone by healing yourself. So that was like a really big like aha for me, and just changed my life, and just changed other people's lives as well with the story.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for sharing, Morris. It's been so incredible to see. I've known you now for 2.5 years, something like that. Like, I've known you, seen a little bit more and more when David started introducing you around. I'm like, oh, this is Morris, this is cool. And seeing you step into your light time and time and time again and owning it has been incredible. And that's what you've been doing, right? Is you've been stepping into your light, owning it, saying, hey, this is who I am. I'm not going to be afraid to shine my light, to share it with others by writing these devotionals, by going up and doing the preaching and just owning it, sharing your stories, right? Living it, breathing it, but then also sharing it, right? Writing it down and putting it out there. Now people get to see it and recognize it and be impacted by it. And you're not doing it for them per se. You're not doing it to try to get the fame or notoriety. You're doing it because this is helpful for me. This is what I'm called to do. Well, let me share that out with the world, and then it'll touch the right people, and people you don't even expect or expected to hear it or be touched by it are. And that goes for all of us. When you embrace your light, when you shine bright, right, you're just owning it and sharing it with the world just by being your true authentic self, by putting it out there, doing that something scary, writing that book or making that video, or just doing something that is different for you but excites you. People see that, and then you're allowing them, and you're giving them permission, not that they need it, but they feel like they need that permission to go forward. And they go, oh, well, look at this. Alicia's being super brave. She's doing this. I can do that. Well, Alexandra did this. Oh my gosh, I can do this, right? All of those things in our life. Like Beverly, she could ride a bike. Oh my gosh, I know I could do these things, right? Bernil can slap around Spencer and give him a 60-second hug and not be awkward about it. Anybody can do that, right? Like whatever it is, you are giving yourself permission and giving other people that opportunity to do it. And we all have our
Yeah.
own. I know I picked on a couple of you. We all have those
Yeah.
things.
Yeah. I just want to add to that as far as that goes with the relationships. But when my mom passed in this month in 2022, it left a hole, and I felt like I missed like a year and a half, almost 2 years of my life. So that devotional that I put out there, it just helped with grief as well, and the healing and not bottling it up inside, bottled it up where I felt I broke my back and sort of needed surgery. So I take that now, and I just, when I have those feelings, I just write. It might not be about my mom, it might be something else, but I take that energy that was like, stuck in my gut, and I just put it out there in a devotion. It could be about our interns that we have. It could be just about anything. Some I publish, some some I leave in a draft, but it's all it becomes part of your being in all different areas that you could heal or thrive, and push that push energy in those different ways. So
Yeah,
thank you for allowing that space and for that.
thank you for sharing and giving us that energy. And everything's energy. Everything is, right? You're the universe, God, your whole being, it feels it all. Whether it's published, literally published or not, it's still just your thoughts. It's felt by the world. David, you had your hand up as well.
Yeah, so that's exactly, adding a little bit to what Mara. So, it's finding the people who give you that safe space to tell your story. As Spencer mentioned earlier, took him, many years to get through that story and comfortable through that. And then it's not just knowing your story. Almost everybody raised their hands earlier when they said that they had a story. How to get through that story. That's where the training of again, I don't know how many people know that I was a peer recovery advocate. So I've helped people through some of their darkest moments to get through that, and I have the right tools to do that. So, that's where when Morris was talking about, I was like, yeah, you can tell me anything, like literally anything. And, and then it brings out getting your story out, as Morris shared in his story today that he shared, that other people are going to see it. You might be like a little scared, puts it out there, and the people that you didn't think were going to resonate with it, resonate with it. It's once you become you, that becomes so powerful. And that's where your power is. It's scary. I'm not going to tell you it's not scary and you'll be fine. And Dave could help you, or Spencer could help you, or Katie could help you through that scary. No, it's scary. There's still times I'm scared when I write a post because somebody, like I'll get feedback, as Spencer mentioned. Oh, you're writing about this one. I'm like, no, that person wasn't even on the top 10 of my list. I'm writing, most of the things I write is for me, is healing me, how I'm feeling and being authentic. And that's the beauty of the power that we all have within ourselves with our story. And that's why I said, write your story. Don't show it to anybody for now. Write it till you're comfortable with it. Right. That's why when I wrote those 35 pages before my TEDx talk, I wrote it to get it all out. Let me just write it all out. It's in black and white. Some of it was ugly. Sometimes I was the victim. Sometimes I was I was also the problem in the case. And sometimes I was the hero who rose out of the ashes. And with that, that's where you work. And you do need people. I had people reviewing my writing. And in fact, I hired people that were not Bernil who told me that they were going to edit it. And when I came out, I was like, there's a double chapter there. Okay, that happens. So it's okay. It's not, everything's not, doesn't have to be perfect. Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. And get your story out is so powerful. That's why I do understand when people say, well, I'm an author, I have a chapter in a book, 100%. But I also then go, did you hide in that book? Yes, you're the author in a book, but are you doing it because you want to hide in the crowd? I know when I held that book that I created from beginning to end, from story to the finish of the book, I touched those words. Those words were formed by me. When it's on my cover and people give me feedback, and of course I've had feedback, well, you missed a comma, your grammar isn't great. I'm like, okay, that's fine. I could always change it. So it doesn't have to be that when you publish a book, you can't have new editing changes. You can't find somebody like Bernil who would then be able to look at your book and be like, hey, this is missed. That's what a next edition is, or an improved edition becomes.
Right.
The idea is to get your story out, and there's so many different ways that we could do that and love to have those conversations with people or have that feedback, what's holding you back and how we can assist you. And that's what brings, Energizer Publishing a whole lot different than anybody else. I'll put us up against any of the other companies out there, not because I'm part of it. It's just I know what I can bring, I know what Spencer could bring, and I know what Katie can bring, and I know what you would like to bring if you really close your eyes and imagined yourself like that day in the back of a full room. Nobody knew what I was going through, but holding my own book, holding your child, a different way of looking at it is holding that book. Man, it still gets me when I talk about it at places. It's still, I put myself back in. It's one of those touchstone moments in our lives where there's a certain moment in our lives where we're like, I'll never forget that moment because it's ingrained in us.
100%. Once you own that story and you're sharing it out with the world, and if you write it down and publish it with us or anyone, but just holding that book, it's truly incredible. I remember getting my first book and being like, holy cow, it's real, it's right here. And it was that first one was just sharing a story of going kayak fishing and sharing that expertise because I didn't see that story or those tips anywhere else. So let's put it into a place. And Katie's first story, so holding her first published book, just seeing the smile on her face and the warmth in her heart. I want to speak for her, but it was so incredible to see. And I will say this, if you are interested in writing a book, you all have those stories in you, right? You're interested in being published, reach out to me, reach out to David. You go to energizerpublishinghouse.com and we'd be more than happy to help you, right? Publish your book, share that story out with the world. Know that you are already living your story, right? Your story that you take, that you tell yourself, that you tell the world. It's happening every day. Be the author of that story. And if you want to write that story or your expertise down to the tips and tricks and things you've learned, you want to share that out with others, contact us, right? Reach out to David or I or Katie and we'll connect you and we can get that published out there so you can hold your own book because it's so awesome to feel it. But with all this, it is a book launch, right? We've talked about your story. Can we talk about our stories now? Like, it's just been so hard to wait, and just, I'm excited. But so how about this? We'll have Katie share about her book first, the idea behind it, any things she wants to share about it, all that good stuff. Then I'll share about mine, and then we'll pass it off to David to kind of be the host to do a Q&A session. If y'all have questions or whatever, or ask away, we can dig into it, and then we can share the link, and you can all get your own copies of it and share it out with the world and all that good stuff. So does it work for you? Give me a thumbs up if you're cool with Katie sharing her story. Awesome. I love all those thumbs up. Yay! Katie, it's all yours.
All right. Well, this is my fifth picture book that I've come out with. It's called The Day the Sun Forgot to Shine. It's really exciting because, well, first of all, I got the idea for this story and started writing it, and it just flew out of me. Like it just flowed right through my fingers onto the page. I was like, oh, this is incredible. And then I went back to reread it to make revisions, and I stopped and I was like, oh my God, this is like Jones and Four propaganda right here. It's like, I was like, oh, so I just wrote a story that's all about like how we all have a light inside of us, and if we shine it in the world, it helps other people ignite their light. And I'm like, oh my gosh, Spencer's, okay, this worked out. But I love the story. Lila wakes up one morning and she looks outside the window, and even though the sun should be shining, it's dark and it's twilight outside, and everyone in her town seems sad and they're just not themselves. And so she goes on a journey where she meets you know, a talking firefly and a talking cloud and the wise old oak tree, where she tries to figure out how she can do things to help her neighbors get their sparkle back and to help the sun remember to shine. And one of the really cool things about it is that my mom actually helped me with the illustrating. So my mom is Linda Jones. She illustrated one of my other books as well. And so it's really cool because we combined some different types of media. So my mom drew the characters, like the birds, the people, the firefly, stuff like that. But then Spencer and I took photographs of our actual town, like our neighborhood. And so we used like a filter to make it look not like a real photograph. And so we mixed together the photos and then the drawings by my mom. And so it's just kind of cool. I thought it was kind of a neat, different way to do things. And it's always cool to collaborate, you know, with your family and to create something together. So it's really cool that she and I got to share in doing that. And yeah, I'm really excited. Um, I'm planning to do some author talks at schools and classrooms next year. And so I'm really excited to be able to share about the process of writing and then also the process of creating something that looks different maybe than something else someone else would create. So I'm really excited that today is the launch for the day the sun forgot to shine, and I'm just super pumped. So there you go.
Yay for being super pumped. I love it. It was so cool to see Kay and then take the picture. Well, first writing it, she's like, "Oh my gosh, I have this idea," and she was like, "Done." Like she's like me, like, "Oh, I have this idea and done," right? But just with writing, it is so awesome to hear the story for the first time, and then I'm like, "Oh my gosh, you have to share the story." She's like, "No, I'm not ready." I'm like, "Just share it." And I was already on Zoom with a friend, and she's like, You're forcing me to read this already?" And then I finished my book and I had the first person read it and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so nervous. And she's like, yeah, you made me do that on Zoom. Like, sorry, I didn't realize it. Now I get it. But oh my gosh. I'm putting in the chat right now. Oh, you need to go, Bernil. No worries. Congratulations. Thank you so much. So I'm putting in the chat right now the link to get a copy of our book so you can see Katie's book and all that. And I'll share a little bit about mine. So mine, The Best View in the World. Some of you have been part of the sneak peek club that we've had for this. So my friend Javi did the cover for it. Amazing design. This story is basically this guy named Simon he's had a dream his whole life, a dream that's been haunting him over and over again about seeing this view, and he's not sure what it all means and this adventure. Well, long story short, he gets to go on that adventure to see that best view in the world. The scary part is, well, in all the dreams, he dies, right? He dies trying to see that best view. You have to see if he makes it or not in this one by reading it. But he goes on this adventure with his friend Ali, and they go across the world to have this adventure, and the lessons that happen throughout it are really cool, and something that we can all apply in our lives, right? So for me, the inspiration for this book was The Alchemist. I love reading The Alchemist and some of those other stories that I've shared with you earlier, right? Chop wood, carry water, energy bus, things like that helped inspire this to be, all right, it's a fiction book, but it's a personal growth nonfiction, or it's a fiction book, but it's a personal growth fiction book, right? So it's the story about this guy going on an adventure to see the best view in the world, realizing the best view in the world isn't an actual view. It's how you view the world. It's how you own your story and share it with the world. And so Katie helped me a ton with this because I go to her since she's an experienced author in the fiction world. So I go to her, I'm like, Katie, how do you get these people to have a conversation like this? How does that look out of writing? How can we go deeper with this conversation? Like, I just don't. And she's like, oh, here, da 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 da, or let's try this. And like, I'm like, I have no idea how you format this type of thing. Like, how does this work? And she's like, oh, here, let me show you. Da 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 da. And I'm like, okay. So thank you, Katie, for all your support. And one of the cool things. All right, y'all get it. Let me ask this: do you want two little like cool secrets about this book? No one else will get unless I'm like asked later on about it. Okay, yeah. I see Alexandra going, yes. And Laura giving thumbs up. All right. So the first thing is I started this book 3 years ago. it's been a long, 4 years ago, 4 years ago at this point, I started this book. And then life got crazy and I put it down and I didn't pick it up again till last year when I'm like, I really want to finish this book, really want to finish it. Let's get through our summit. And then it was just gung-ho and wrote it. As I was wrapping up the book last year, Katie and I were reading Dracula. And we were doing Dracula daily. So if you know Dracula, it's written in a journal style entry and it has dates to it. So we read the Dracula happening on that day, whenever it was supposed to happen, right? And we're back to it now because it started all over again. Any case, Jonathan, the main character in the, well, outside Dracula, the main character in the book, the first part talks about paprika a lot. Like the dishes are seasoned with paprika. So there's some paprika references in here, just as a little homage to Dracula, which is just totally random. And after reading, or as we were reading Dracula, I'm like, it'd be cool if we had journal entries for him, right? Like that'd be cool. And we're like, Kate's like, yeah, that'd be a cool way to tie everything in. So in the journal entries, you'll notice the paprika references, all a little homage to Dracula and reading it. All right, so that's the first little random, crazy, just a little sneak peek insider bit. The second part's this. So this is one of the journal entries. I don't know if you could see, so this is what it looks like, right? You have cool little stuff. I'll show you that one. Can you see the writing on there? Yeah, hopefully you can. It looks a little different. Like, here's what the normal writing looks like, font looks like, and then here's a journal entry. Different font. Yeah, that font, you will not find it in your word processor, in your whatever. You won't find it because it's Katie's. It's Katie's handwriting we made into a font. So Katie's handwriting is the journal entries in the book. So you can actually read it. If it was my handwriting, you wouldn't be able to understand a damn thing in it. But it's Katie's, so you can actually understand it. So there's fun little extra tidbits for it. Super, super excited to share it out. And I will say, for both Katie's and our books, we have the ebook version. If you like ebooks, that's cool. There's paperback versions. And the website I shared with it has links to all of them on Amazon, so you can get them there. You can also go to your local library, Barnes & Noble, Walmart, wherever you want, and get your own copy of a book. It's all good. You ask your library to get it. They can be able to get access to it through our publishing company. So these are the first two books officially published by the Energizer Publishing House. We thought it would be fitting that they would publish our books. So you see the cool logo. You can see David's shirt. If he stood up, you could see the shirt there with the logo. Yeah, look at that. See, rocking it. So the first two official books there. Ebook, paperback for both of ours, and my book, Katie. I could do the reading for it as well, but Katie reads stories much better than I do. So Katie is going to be doing the audiobook version here in the next couple of weeks, and we'll get uploaded so then you can hear Katie's voice reading the story of Simon's adventure in the next couple of weeks. And so I'll be sure to share that when that comes out. So with that, those are our books. The link's in there. Go get your copy, share it out with other people. Let's make this go. I have a really big goal. I'll say it's a goal. It's like one of those goals I'm going, holy crap, why am I doing this? And that is to sell not 100, not 1,000 copies. Most books sell less than 1,000 copies in their lifetime. I'm going for 1 million copies within the first year. I've been nowhere near that with any of my other books, but I'm like, why not, right? Like the reviews and things that people have left for this here, I'm going to boast for a moment. As I've been doing this whole time. So, why change now? So obviously I've shared this with like 5 people to leave reviews for and to get their testimonials, put it in the book. So they got little preview copies of it. And I'm like, all right, they're friends of mine, right? I asked them to do me a favor, read the book and leave it. And they're like, sure. Holy crap. Like the reviews they left me gobsmacked. Like I kid you not. So one of them by Dr. Matthew Rao, awesome guy if you ever get a chance to meet him. He's the author of Upbeat Mindset. Anyway, so he put, I'm going to read it here. Spencer Jones is a master, of weaving in personal growth into a meaningful story in the style of and at the same level as the 4 Agreements and the Go-Giver. Like, holy crap, right? Like to get that, I'm like, I didn't ask him for that. I didn't ask him for any of that. He just wrote that. I'm like, damn, son, thank you so much. Like, it was just so incredible. Anyway, I'm just super, super pumped. So anyway, I can't wait. And if you get when you get your copy, not if when you get your copy, and you feel like leaving a review, please share it there. Share it with us. I have some special stuff I want to send you all for leaving a review. So make sure you take a screenshot of it and send it my way because I want to send you something special. But we'll open it up. Any questions, thoughts about being the author of your story, writing these stories, anything like that? David.
Yeah, I just want to, so I just wanted to add storytelling. So I don't know how many people here are coaches or do other things. Storytelling is a great way. So Stacy, Katie had mentioned exactly, like it's like a pitch for, Jones and for, but there's nothing wrong with that. So as you're telling a story, that's how people read my comic book and they're like, yeah, I know what you do. I'm like, no, you didn't. And it's also a good thing about then also sharing what you do. So it's a entertaining way to do that rather than just teaching. I don't know about anybody here. I don't necessarily always like somebody to say, David, you have to do this. This is the way you have to do it. I'd rather tell a story. Picture, it's the great thing about reading a book is that we picture ourselves in the book. We hear it from our voice versus somebody else's voice.
Right.
And that's the really powerful part. I mean, what I've done also, even with the comic book, is I've gotten a group of people together because it is a comic book is more expensive than a regular book, but you could then see yourself as a superhero. Again, have fun with your book. You could do that in a number of ways, and that's what we really want to do. So, Katie, how did it feel? So when you realized that it might be a little bit of a marketing, right? It might be the pushing out a manifesto, maybe. But how did that feel to you?
Uh, it actually feels really good because, of course, as a former teacher and writing children's books, I'm thinking, how can I teach kids about kindness and it's just it lines up with exactly what Jones and Four is all about, making the world a better place, spreading joy. And I was like, I was joking to Spencer, like, oh, it's propaganda for you, but it's really it's a lesson everybody needs to learn, whether they're 4 years old or 84 years old. We should all be kind and make the world a better place.
Yeah, no, and that's really what I wanted to hear because it really is okay. You get to sit back after writing a book, and you get to sit back and be like, okay, is this true to myself? And do I feel complete in that story, right? Our lives, when we think about it, are multiple stories. As you said, you're a multiple author, and Spencer's a multiple author. It's not that we just wrote one book and okay, I'm good. There's only that one story in our lives. How did you get into the illustration part? See, that's where I have some children's books in my head. I haven't found the right illustrator, so maybe we need to talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, well, it was definitely challenging. My mom has a very unique drawing style, and so I always like the first book she illustrated for me was called Meet Nielsen Kisselfink. And when I thought of the characters in my brain, like I was picturing them in my mom's style. And so I described the characters and I gave her ideas and she drew Nielsen. And then I looked at it and I was like, Mom, it's like you literally took Nielsen out of my brain and put him onto paper. Like it was incredible. Yeah, so cool. And then this time around, I initially had planned for my mom to draw everything, the scenes, the characters, all that stuff. Well, working with family is great, but also can be challenging. She didn't quite necessarily follow my directions. And so I kind of had to pivot and spent a lot of time learning about how to do things. Like Spencer's like, what if we use photographs for the backgrounds? And I was like, okay, we can do that. So then I had to learn different programs on the computer, like how can I use filters to make it look like this whimsical dream world? And then a lot of it, because I am not like an artist, like drawing stick figures don't even look good for me. It's not good. So I don't see myself as that creative person in that way, but I really had to step into that role in this case to try to produce what it was that I wanted. So doing things like using like the filters, but then also putting like a layer over the pictures for earlier in the story when it's still dark, when the sun's not shining. I used different, like I would remove the layers as the story went on. So then finally by the end, it's brighter. So I think it's finding someone who can create at least elements of what it is you're looking for and not really compromising. You know, if my mom had drawn the characters for Nielsen Kisselfink and it didn't look like what I wanted, I would have kept trying, like, okay, what about this? Can you change it this way? But if it didn't work, I think it's continuing until you find something that's going to be what you want, because you don't want to look at your book at the end and go, eh, I guess that's fine. You know, you really want to be like, yes, that's what I envisioned, that's what I created, and here it is.
It's that line in the sand where we're like, okay, this is who I am, or at that moment, this is who I was, and telling my story. So I love that. Thank you. Yeah.
Oh, love
Does
it.
anybody have
Thank you.
any questions for Katie?
It's okay if you don't. Yeah, no, I
Yeah,
appreciate
if it's
it.
okay.
Huh.
So
I just want to, so, it gave me some good ideas for like Sunday school to, like some illustration and bringing some of, combination of what Dave and Katie were talking about and throwing it into a Sunday school, kind of program, and then putting them on a journey as, normally they follow the Bible, but maybe follow the Bible and your own journey with it, like putting an exercise. This whole, just wanted to share that's what I'm getting out of this, this whole thing. Thank you.
Love it. That's awesome.
yeah, it's all about your story and how you see it. So again, with my comic book, like I knew it had to be a visual because of this how I wrote the story in my head, and I knew it was a very visual. Where some of the other books, it's okay. Imagine riding a horse, great. The other pieces, like what you need and what the visual look that you have and the feel. That's the opportunity that you have when you write a book. And I guess, to pivot a little bit to Spencer. So you had a vision of when the story started writing in your head that you needed to then put onto. How'd that go? Could you tell us a little bit about that process?
Yeah, definitely. So for me, the previous books I've written, the nonfiction ones, I had the whole story, the arc of what it was going to look like, right? This chapter is going to be this chapter is going to be this. So knowing I wanted to challenge myself to do fiction, I'm like, I don't know what this will look like, but I know to create a plan. So I had a big whiteboard in my office and I drew like a whole journey. So it was a big loops up here and then down here to the end. And I had beginning of the story, end of the story, the peak of like, here's the climax, here's the stuff, and then things I thought would be cool to happen along the way, right? And I just like put little like slashes on the trail, like, oh, this happens. Oh, this happens at this point. Oh, he meets a monk at this point. He talks to a gypsy at this point. Okay. And like learns these lessons. Great. So I started writing it and following that to a degree and kind of what I'm thinking. And I'm like, and then it just, this was 4 years ago. And I'm like, this just isn't hitting. Like something's off. I just need to put it down for a little bit, sit with it, sat with it for like 3, 4 years, and then 3 years, then picked it back up. But then realizing, okay, that arc is there, that path is there, but I also need to listen to the characters and have them guide me about where to go. This is a good template. It's like, all right, here's the trail map, but you guys get to create your own trail. Do you want to follow this one or do you rather go this one? And they took some surprising turns and different conversations. I'm like, oh, I remember going to Kate at one point, like, oh my God, I can't believe they just like Ollie just said this. Like, what an asshole. Like, I can't believe you just did this stuff. And I'm like, I didn't expect it. It just felt right to write or say it because it's that story that you get in your head and they just guide you along the way. And so it was, okay, I have an idea, I have a plan. Like Katie has a plan for her fiction stories. Like this is the general sense. But how you get to A to B is all up to the characters. I might have an idea, like I had an idea of what happened, but man, it took some interesting twists and turns along the way that even surprised me, which was it was really cool to experience in something different. And you have to let go of what you wanted or expected and just let it lead. And then you can go and tweak it if needed. But it's so much easier when you let go. And I was trying to force it. That's when it felt off.
Yeah, well, I think that's part of that trust the universe to bring our stories out.
Yeah.
That's really what happened with me. I was like, I promised Spencer I was going to finish the book, and then I got this idea that as I was driving, I was like, "You, here's a diary." I mean, and I started writing, and then once you start writing, I sat down. It was Easter Sunday. I was by myself. I was like, "All right, great, I can finish it." I knew exactly what I was going to do, and then the story wrote itself. I mean, I have 80 pages of a story that I wrote on that day. And even then, when I started rereading it, I'm like, oh no, this should go this different way. So it's all about how our stories we think they are. Think about it in life, how we think it's going to go this way. We're going to, it's going to go straight, man. All right, I now have it all figured out. Life is going to be great now. Green lights, rainbows, and lollipops the rest of my life. And then something happens. The story takes a turn, right? That transition, right? Man, but the sun is out. There's green lights. And what do you mean? There was a TV show, and I always talk about that when I coach, or there was a Thousand Ways to Die. It was with Mandy Patinkin. Uh, and it was like, if it's your day, it's your day, no matter what. An asteroid's going to come down. The a monkey's going to escape the zoo and jump in front of your car. There's a million different ways. But the same thing as writing, there's a million different ways. Your story might go from the beginning to the end, but how it turns back around becomes the real story of it, the real power behind the story. And that's the fun part. And I'll that's the question that I would ask you, Spencer. When you first started writing it 4 years ago, is this the way the book finished for now? Was that the way you planned it in your head, or was there that growth piece?
There's a lot of growth. I'm a very different person than I was 4 years ago. I've learned and grown so much personally, mentally, physically, spiritually, all of those. Intentionally. Like I've really worked hard at continuing my growth journey, and that really applied to the book. Like the book it was going to be good, I think, beforehand, right? With the previous ideas and thoughts. But the growth that I've had and realizing, oh, I am the light, I have the light inside, and how do we do this? How can we help other people? And tapping into it myself and allowing myself to be my true authentic self even more than I was 4 years ago. Um, that allowed these characters and the story to come to life so much more than it ever would have before. It would have been good, but I believe that journey that I've gone on the last 4 years has really carried it on. And there's already plans for not necessarily sequels with this, but other fiction books along the way. I'm thinking short stories, but some fun stuff of continuing these different aspects of little parts of our journey that I'm learning and have gone through. So, but yeah, it's definitely different because I've grown.
Okay, that's awesome. So, just putting in the work, and I think that's what we're saying. Put in the work on the stories that you have
Right.
for all of us. Does anybody have any questions they want to ask Katie or Spencer?
Well, I just want to say thank you to everybody for being here, for spending 2 hours with us and learning and talking about your story, the story you are telling yourself, telling the world, and even writing down. And I know we're here to help you do that. And I'm just so grateful for your love and support for Katie and I, David, for the entire Energizers, right? No, you're not alone. You might feel alone at times in this journey in those middle messy sections, but you're not. You have me, you have Katie, you have David, you have the entire Energizer family here by your side supporting you. And use the tools, use the strategies, use the books that we've written and others to help you on your way. And I'm incredibly grateful for your love and support, of the launch of these books. Thank you, thank you, thank you. If you could do me a favor, order a book, right? Order our books, and invite other people to share it with someone else you think would love it. And please have them just tell them to get a copy, see if they like it. And just thank you for everything. I love you all. I'm incredibly grateful. David, thank you for being here, for sharing your knowledge and wisdom with us and everything. Any last questions or thoughts before we head out? Go once, going twice. You are all amazing. You are amazing, worthy, and enough just the way you are. So thank you so much. Have a beautiful day. Keep shining bright. And thank you for your love and support.